Welcome to Let's Bring It In, the podcast where we dive into the stories that have shaped us as athletes, competitors, and teammates. I'm Coach Kathy Devaney, and here we're talking with athletes of all ages, coaches, parents, and even referees. Because in your world of sports and your competitive experience, it always boils down to stories. So grab a seat, lean in, and let's bring it in. Today we're joined by Anika Shaw, Cal Poly women's basketball superstar standout, leading point guard, Big West sharpshooter, and quiet leader whose game speaks volumes. From dominating the high school scene to dropping career highs in college, Anika's journey is about more than just buckets. It's about belief, bounce backs, and becoming. We're going to talk flow state, free throws, leadership, and the moments that molded her into the player, the person she is today. This is one you're going to want to lean into. So settle in. Let's bring it in with Anika Shaw. Welcome, Anika.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. We were chatting before we started about how Anika is the first person I've gotten to interview or engage with whom I've never met before.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to test my mettle about a chit-chatter and how good I am at eliciting information and stories from a real superstar. So do my best to kind of guide it, but please tell us your stories as relates to the kind of the prompts that I give you. Yeah?
Yeah,
Okay,
let's do it.
So let's start with your early athletic influences, your resilience and creativity. Share what growing up was like in your household with basketball always part of the picture. And were there other sports in your youth? What shaped your early days?
Yeah, so, I'm Indian. I grew up in an Indian household. We're not too traditional, but, we are strong and love our culture. But sports and extracurricular activities were something that my parents didn't get an opportunity to do because they just had to focus on their academics. And that was kind of just the traditional way of thinking. But, when my parents had my brother and I, they wanted to make sure that we did everything because they didn't get that opportunity to.
So they were very supportive early
They
on.
were very, very supported.
Your brother older or younger?
I have an older brother.
Okay.
He's 20 months, I think, older than me. So we're basically twins. Mm-hmm. We're super, super close. He's the best. He's probably my biggest supporter.
And he's at Georgetown right now.
Yeah, he graduated at Georgetown.
Okay.
Yeah, so he just graduated last year, and now he's back doing investment banking at Evercore in the Bay Area.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's doing good. But anyways, growing up in the household and having an older brother that I was really close with, a very competitive household. Both my parents, they're from Chicago. Before, my dad was born in India, and then he migrated with his whole family here when he was about 4, so pretty much born and raised kind of in the U.S. And my mom was born, she's also Indian, born in New York, but her family migrated from India before she was born. But they were both from Chicago. They met at University of Illinois, and but specifically my dad loved basketball. It was something that my mom kind of picked up too, and she's very fiery and probably the loudest ones at my games now.
I
but
love that.
she and my dad just loved the Chicago Bulls. My dad was a huge Michael Jordan fan, which is an easy person to be a fan of, and he is someone who, I think Illinois, when he was in college, he always tells this story, but when they lost, I think in the Final Four, he literally just got up and left and drove for 4 hours because he was so pissed that they lost. And my mom was pissed at him. But that kind of just shows, how much basketball was something that they loved and enjoyed together, and that was kind of the one sport that they really pushed on both my brother and I.
Did they take you to any big games?
So we would go to a lot of Warriors games because I'm from the Bay Area. And, I've been a Warriors fan since, they were really bad before. Now, obviously, they're okay now. They were really, really good. So it's nice it's kind of cool because my parents grew up during that Chicago Bulls dynasty. And then I got the Warriors. My brother and I got the Warriors dynasty, which was awesome. Yeah. But yeah, they would take us to a lot of games, and, they kind of made us do everything. I have my black belt in Taekwondo. Yeah. I played a lot of tennis growing up. Tennis is probably my second favorite sport. But I've done everything. I've done soccer, I've done softball. Both my parents, they worked a lot growing up, so they kind of had to put us into all these extracurricular activities because they had to work. You know, they didn't have time to be with us at home and things like
keep
that.
some structure.
Yeah, so but basketball was the one thing that my brother and I kind of fell in love with, and every activity that I've ever done, I've done with my brother. So that kind of leads into me playing with the boys. It was because my parents didn't really have that opportunity to take my brother to one practice and then me to a girls' practice. It was kind of just like, oh, like you just go with your brother. And so it kind of got to a point where I was just kind of playing with the boys, and obviously with my brother, and things got a little competitive in the backyard a lot. But when I would go to these clinics with my brother, it got to a point where, you know, a lot of these coaches, you know, they recognize, you know, that I'm pretty good at a young age, and they just were like, oh, does she want to play with the boys? And so my parents were like, yes, because they didn't want to have to deal with taking me to another team. So I ended up playing with the boys from about 3rd grade up until 8th grade before the high school transition. And that was awesome. They're some of my, like, brothers for life. And I keep in touch and still train with a bunch of them when I'm back home.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you share a specific story? Did you ever run into resistance from parents or other players?
Yeah.
Did you, as a girl,
Yeah.
which I see a lot with our talented women, even today, right?
Yeah.
Something I experienced, something Deanne experienced before, other guests I've had. Did you experience anything negative about that opportunity to play up because you're playing at a more aggressive level?
Yeah, I would mainly just say a lot of the commentary about it, the voices that you hear, thankfully, like the coaches that I had, you know, believed in me. They obviously saw something in me when I was in 3rd grade, or, you know, they always had my back. And, you know, a lot of them that I'm still really close with, their families are the best. And, you know, again, like I was saying, they're some of my brothers that, you know, I grew up with and shared so many experiences with. But, you know, there are a lot of times, you know, we would go up and we played in this league up in Oakland, the Oakland Soldiers League, and you would go and, like, a lot of people, you know, you see a girl on the court, and, you know, hearing commentary from parents of the other team telling their son to just take the ball from her, she's a girl, block her, she's just a girl, like, all these comments, and they end with she's just a girl, right? And my parents would actually always tell me them, specifically my dad. He was the main person who really pushed me through this journey, but he would always tell me that so I could use it as fuel and use it as something to you know, make me want to just push harder and be a better player, and use that as something to motivate me. And so, you know, and a lot of times too, like, I'm kind of focused on the game. I don't really hear a lot of that stuff, but there are certain times that I did.
I was going to ask, when you are, and I want to talk really briefly about something very unique in this scenario, philosophy of sport, which I came up with years ago.
Yeah.
But the blinders issue, right? The ability to put on blinders.
Yeah.
So that comes or doesn't come to an athlete. And sometimes it's from a mentor like your dad, somebody who says to you, you know, just put your head down, tune it out, whatever.
Yeah.
Every sport lends itself to different kinds of personality traits and certainly emotional skill sets.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting. Let me share this observation with you, and I want your input.
Okay.
You talked about tennis and basketball.
Yeah.
So I came up with this realization long ago, having coached volleyball and having coached soccer, those two, like, specifically.
Yeah.
The type of athlete that's drawn to basketball versus tennis. So let's look at it. Basketball is confined space. Lots of movement, lots of aggression. You're in each other's space, and it's very, very physical.
Yeah.
Tennis, like volleyball, right? That is, you're never in contact.
Yeah.
Right? It's also a sport which has a great deal of failure in it.
Yes.
Every point is awarded by somebody else making a mistake. So, like, when we would talk around the dinner table at our house, we'd be like, okay, do you have the kind of personality that can get over the constant mistake making?
Yeah.
Right? Or are you more inclined to want to be in a sport like soccer or basketball, where you can make decisions on the field and the flow, and it's easier to hide a mistake here and there?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's interesting that those two that are vastly different are two that you gravitated toward.
Yeah. I think too, now that you're mentioning it, like, I'm just thinking back, and, you know, I played tennis kind of in middle school, and then I played for my high school team for a little bit before I really committed to basketball. But I love tennis.
What is it you liked about it? So share.
I mean, I just liked, I would say at first it's just like hitting the ball really hard. When you get a really good forehand and you just hit it as hard as you can, and it goes in, it's like that feeling is just like, wow. But I think, well, honestly, what I liked about tennis is because playing at a younger age, I was doing really well because I think I had that mental toughness. And you see a lot of kids that, were playing and they make one mistake or they hit the ball into the net or whatever it is, and they immediately you can tell, like, as a competitor, as an opponent, oh, I have an upper edge because I know that they're kind of low right now. They just made a mistake. And I know that if I make a mistake and having that mental toughness, that, okay, what am I telling myself, right? Like, am I like, okay, next one's in, or if I really think about, like, what I need to do better or why I, messed up that point, rather than a lot of other kids, you see them just immediately getting mad at themselves or things like that. Like,
so you learned about your edge early.
I did.
That's natural.
I did, and I think
right?
I got that from playing with the boys.
Very good. Okay, so let me ask you, as it translated to the basketball court and basketball practice, and like you, even though it's generation ahead, I used to wish there were, in volleyball, I wish there were 5 more of me on the court, right?
Yeah.
Like in basketball, I wish there were 4 more, just like me.
Yeah.
I wish everybody cared about it as much as I do. Right?
Exactly.
So that individual, and you recognize when the head drops on your opponent, you're like, okay, I got this now.
Yeah.
Because she's getting in her own head. She's getting in her own way. So now you come to play this very physical sport, basketball.
Yeah.
How does that translate? Did you find that you had to kind of introduce that concept to teammates? Or did you come in contact with other female athletes who had that as well?
Yeah, I think it depends on the level. Like, obviously, in high school, when I transitioned to the boys, it was kind of like a shock, meaning, like, I didn't, you don't see a lot of people like you, right? From playing with the boys, a lot of people with that mental toughness, and just that mindset. So I kind of had to find a way to pour into some of my teammates. Now, when I came to college, you have some teammates like that, but then you also don't. And you have to also understand that everyone's a little different and kind of work like around that. And that's something that I learned, being a captain and being a leader these past couple years. But what I realized is that everyone can take something different from someone else. And whether people take something like my mental toughness or the mindset that I had, what can I take from another teammate? And a lot of times, too, that was how to calm, just different things, like decision making or how to speak to others was a big thing for me, because I grew up with very, direct coaching and very high intensity coaching. But you also have to understand, especially going to the girls' side, that everyone responds a little differently. And that's something that I really, really learned as I got to college, because when you are a leader and you are a captain, you need to be heard, right? But you also have to understand, how does everyone individually on my team take in information? Because I want to make sure that they hear it.
Right.
And so that was a interesting process that I went through, being, someone from a young age who was pushed really, really hard, and I heard it a lot. And that built my mental toughness, but then understanding that not everyone is shaped that way, and that's okay.
And I want to circle back to your captainship, your leadership at Cal Poly, but let's stay here for a second. I want to talk about Taekwondo.
Yeah.
And then a little bit about how that shaped your the similar mindset. That's an edge. It's really an edge.
Yeah.
Particularly nowadays, young athletes put a great deal of pressure on themselves.
Yes.
Right? And then I want to, before we move on to other stuff, I want to hear about those early coaches.
Yeah.
And how you feel they directly impacted you, and what you made specific decisions to take from them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So tell me a little about the martial arts. Why Taekwondo?
Yeah. Well, again, it kind of really started because my parents were super busy, and they had to put my brother and I into something else, and it's actually something my dad loved. He loved, like, martial art movies, and he always wanted to do it.
Is
So
Taekwondo the one that's defensive
Yeah,
only?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
right.
yeah.
It's not attack.
Yep.
Karate is attacking,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was all defense, right? And
Right.
so it was, something that was close. My brother and I sometimes would bike to it. I'm from Palo Alto, so Palo Alto is known to be like a biking city. But at first, like, I didn't really like it. I didn't at all. But then I kind of was like, well, it's kind of light early on, and
How old are you at this point?
I was, I think 6th grade.
Okay.
So I started in 6th grade, and I got my black belt at the end of my sophomore year.
And was that something you just set your sight on? I'm gonna do that, or you just sort of like?
No, so like we started off like not really sure, because you kind of just start off, it's just another activity kind of thing, and if you want to get your black belt, that's something later on that you look at and you're like, okay, am I really going to commit to this kind of thing?
Right.
So, and it's a long journey, right? It took us 5-6 years to get our black belt, so it takes a while, and it takes a while to get to that point where you have to make that decision. But I, it was okay. Like I didn't love it. I just wanted to play basketball, like really. But I got to do it with my brother, and we had some fun doing it sometimes when we sparred and things like that, and taking it to home and putting all our gear on and just like kind of playing around and things like that. But it was, I think my freshman year is when you have to really commit. Okay, we got all the way up to red black belt, I think it is. And then you have to really decide, okay, do I want to actually commit and get my black belt? And at the time, this is when I transitioned to the girls, playing with the girls, and I played with a club team that was NCAA certified, meaning the way that it works in basketball is you go to all these NCAA certified events if you're an NCAA certified team, and you get to play in front of a bunch of college coaches. So this is kind of at the time where I was like, okay, I want to play in college, and I really want to do this. Like, I really want to commit. So it was like, this was kind of the tail end of my freshman year to all the way through my sophomore year. And I actually, like, I'm not a big crier, but I cried to my parents because I was like, I don't want to do this. Like, I just want to play basketball. And because I knew this commitment to get your black belt this last year, it's a real test. Right, you have to sacrifice all your Fridays, your Saturdays, and Sundays because you have to train. And so for part of the journey in the beginning, Fridays were track workouts. Fridays were in the dojo, where it's just with your class. Obviously, we had to go other times during the week. Saturdays were track workouts in the morning at 6 a.m., and then on Sundays later on were beach workouts at, I think it was 7 a.m. in Half Moon Bay, which was kind of a drive. And so I'm just thinking like, okay, when do you usually play basketball games? That's on the weekend, right? So I'm like, I'm going to miss those opportunities to play certain, it wasn't like all the time, but there were certain tournaments that I knew I was going to miss.
And you're in middle school at this point.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, I know. At this point, when I'm training for my black belt, I'm freshman going into sophomore year of high school.
So you really know now. You've got to be doing all the things.
All the things.
This is huge. This is a huge part of your story. So
So
continue.
I was like, I cried to my parents, and I was like, I don't want to do this. But then my dad was like, no, you're gonna get your black belt, and he was like, kind of trying to teach me that there's going to be something that I'm going to get out of this experience that's going to help me later in life. And something totally aside from like, okay, you know how to defend yourself. Like if someone attacks you, like he knew the mental aspect of like, you're going to be tough as hell if you do this.
Right. And
And then he was also like, you started this with your brother, you're going to finish this with your brother kind of thing.
And the wisdom of your dad and your mom to say the basketball's still going to be there.
Yeah.
And you're actually going to be a better athlete.
Yeah.
Having been through this, not just the physical aspect of it, but the
Yeah.
time management, the
Yeah.
commitment, the discipline, and the shared experience with your brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was some wisdom there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Was it a hard sell?
It was hard, and I was mad at them for a little bit. But then, going through the process, it was, there's just no, kind of when you start a workout and then you wake up or you have a workout that morning, you wake up and you're like, oh God, I just want to sleep. And then that moment when you finish the workout, and there's like no greater feeling.
That's victory.
Yeah.
Absolute triumph.
Yeah.
I get
And
it.
so like every time like I had a beach workout or something, and like, you know, I was still kind of hesitant in the mornings. I'm like, oh God, why am I doing this? But every time I finished, I learned something about myself, if that makes sense.
It
I was
does.
like, wow, like I did that, and I did this, and we did this, like, because I got to do it with a team of other great kids that were my age too. And so getting that black belt was, you know, a lot of times with our team, actually, when we do a lot of team building activities, our coach will always ask us, we go around and everyone asks a question, and it can range from like, oh, what's your favorite ice cream flavor, to what she asks is, what's your defining moment? And, you know, when I went in and as like a 17, 18-year-old, and she asked me that, and I'm like, I have no idea I'm 18 years old. But then when I really thought about it, when I translate everything to basketball, I've realized that my defining moment so far in my life was getting that black belt.
Okay, so unpack it.
Yeah.
Because I have a few questions. But this
Yeah.
is wonderful.
Yeah.
I love this. I love this conversation. Was it finishing the last series of movements before tell us what that's like?
Yeah.
What are the final things you have to do, and then what is the reward after? Paint the picture for us.
Yeah. So the test specifically was, I think, a 3-day, if I can remember correctly, it was a 3-day test. And so the first day is you're on the track. So you got to get a certain mile time. You got to do that. It's mainly a lot more conditioning and physical. The next day was, I think, it was all our movements. So we do, they're called forms. And they're all these movements that are compiled into about 25, 30 movements. And so there's multiple forms that you have to remember, and then you have to showcase it, right? So day 2 was forms, and a little bit like we use sticks. We didn't really, nunchucks are after you get your black belt and things like that, but sticks were part of the black belt test. So there's a couple things you have to do with that. And the last day was all kicking.
Okay. That's
And
intense.
so there was a moment during like that last day where and kicking had to do with breaking boards. So we had wooden boards that you had to break. And my front kick, for some reason, like I killed everything else. My front kick, I couldn't break the board. And that moment, I remember like I could have broke. I could have just victimized myself and been like, why is this not happening for me? I killed everything else. Why can't I get this one board? But I remember hearing from like my team and my brother, like, come on, let's go. You got this. And I failed about 5 times straight.
Wow.
Meaning not that I failed the test or anything, meaning I didn't break the board. And so then, you know, to hear everyone like kind of push me, and I knew I had to do this for them, right? Because we just went through all this stuff, and I had to break that board, and getting it, I think on that 6th try was like, that was the final moment of like, wow, I just got my black belt kind of thing. And it was interesting that this all happened on the last thing that I needed to complete too.
Interesting.
So it's like, I kind of was like, I was handed a little bit of this adversity, and, you know, you could break, you could have folded under that pressure, but can you rise to the occasion? And thankfully, like, I had a lot of support and my team with me to push me, but that was just a cool moment, and that was kind of the moment I was like, wow, I just got my black belt.
It's a moment you get all to yourself.
Yeah.
Where is your belt now?
It's at home.
Okay.
Yeah, back in Palo Alto with our names on it and everything.
When
yeah.
you look at it, when you look at it, and I want to keep going, but I could talk about this for longer. When you look at that though, like unlike a trophy, right? What's the first thing you feel when your eye catches the belt? Do you remember the moment in the board? Do you remember the friends? Do you remember the year that you didn't want to?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the overriding thing you feel?
I think you just hit it, like that part where I wanted to quit, and you know, before this whole process. But I'm also a big journey person rather than, a single reward or all that. And I like to always look back at the journey, and I think every time you remember something different. But at the end of the day, like, that journey, whether it was the 6 years or just that last year, to go through that, it, shaped me into the person that I am today.
There's a huge, we know, I'm sure you know, huge aspects of athletics, right?
Yeah.
Mind, body, spirit, right? And the whole idea that so much of what we train young athletes to do are the fundamentals, the movements. Okay, first you learn the movements, then you learn how your movements coordinate with your teammates, and how then that turns into a win, and so on and so forth. But this whole idea, the mental toughness, all right, pushing yourself, your discipline to threshold. We push our bodies to threshold.
Yeah.
Run another lap, run another a suicide drill, whatever. Do 10 more. But we don't focus. There isn't time, and there isn't time allotted, I find, to those mental and meditative aspects of being a competitive athlete.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the issues we're looking at with young athletes now, is that they're trying to race ahead to the contract, to the NIL, to the NCAA scholarship, to trying to race to the position, and they're missing. They think it's all about being physically capable.
Yeah.
And showing up at the showcase. I mean, that mental toughness doesn't show at the showcase, right?
Yeah.
So, but we know that it does.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's incredible. An incredible piece of your journey has been this decision by your folks to say, I had a similar kind of situation with my mother. She made me keep dancing, ballet.
Okay.
She made me keep taking ballet, and I was done with it. I wanted to go sweat and do sports. I wanted to go do the thing at the public high school. I've been at the Catholic high school, right? But I will never forget how much the discipline of ballet transferred to
of course.
my kinesthetic awareness, but also my discipline for sport.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving forward to your high school prowess, you had an incredibly successful sophomore year, averaging nearly 20 points a game.
Yeah.
So did that come out of nowhere, or were you fired up and ready, or what was that? What was that like for you? You'd finished this freshman obligation.
Yeah.
And now you get to go. You fulfilled your contract. Your mom and dad were now supportive of you diving into basketball full time.
Yeah. So, my freshman year I came in, and you're kind of a freshman, right? But I still had a pretty big role in basically my whole high school decision. I was looking at, like, it's kind of like college, but I was kind of looking at high schools, which high school I should go to. And I had my public school that, my brother was going to, and that I could bike to school every single day. But then I had 2 private schools I was looking at.
Which were the privates?
Archbishop Mitty in San Jose, and then Pinewood.
Oh, Pinewood, okay.
Yeah, and so I was looking, Mitty was kind of just in the decision, but I feel like I was really looking at Pinewood. It was a smaller school, and I went to a private school growing up in elementary school, and I knew that I didn't really like the private school. I liked, a big atmosphere and being with a lot of people and things like that, and I also just wanted to be with my brother. That was kind of what it came down to.
Yeah.
So I ended up going the public school route to Palo Alto High School, which was probably the best decision I could make. Because, I got to play right away, and I gotta kind of just be myself. Those other 2 schools, they're great historically, like, girls basketball, for high school. Like, they're just great programs for high school basketball in the Bay Area, and they have great coaches there. But I kind of would have been, at Pinewood, I kind of would have been a system player. And going to Mitty, it probably one of the best high school coaches in California, coaches there. And, she didn't know me, like, growing up and things like that. So for me to kind of just pop in with all these great other athletes, it would have taken me a while to kind of make a name for myself, right? And so I went to the public school route and, got to make a name for myself right away, which was awesome. But we had a solid team freshman year with some good seniors. So I was there and I was doing well. But it was kind of like the senior show. But then my sophomore year, all those seniors left, and it was kind of like, okay, like, this is my opportunity to step up and show what I'm made of. And, I'm a huge person that I just love to work hard. And I'm a firm believer that if you work hard, like, life's going to figure itself out. And that was something that my parents installed in me. And so that was kind of just my mindset. And so I worked really, really hard, that preseason, that off season, because I knew that this was going to be a big year for me. And I kind of put that pressure on myself. And like a total side note, but I love, my favorite quote probably is pressure is a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that has stuck with me specifically more in college, but I like to look back and think of those moments where I put a lot of pressure on myself, and there's no greater feeling of coming up on top and being like, okay, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyways, going into my high school sophomore year, there was kind of a little bit more pressure on me to be that person, and I was given that opportunity, and I took it and I ran with it. And I was a part of a really, really good team. We had some amazing girls on that team that were so selfless. And, obviously, because I went the public school route, you're getting a lot of girls that played multiple sports, or they didn't really love basketball. It kind of is just like, the way that it worked at our high school was if you played a sport, you got out of PE. So sometimes there were girls that wanted to do that.
That was the sole motivation.
Yeah, so I kind of had to work, through that, because I loved basketball at that point.
Yeah.
I loved it. But then you're working with girls that don't really love it.
Share with our listeners, please, what it was like. Again, I can tell already, we're like-minded, you and
Yeah.
I. You felt like you wanted to infuse this team with the same passion and drive,
Yeah.
and a threshold pushing that you brought to this scenario, this team, this program.
Yeah.
And so you're running into girls who are there for different reasons than you're there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you take your dynamic personality, and were you helped by coaches? Did they see your gifts and kind of guide you to be the leader that you are, or is it something that you took upon yourself at the high school level?
Yeah, I would say, I had a great coach at my high school, but the leadership aspect is kind of something that I kind of took for myself. I was still young at that point. I was still only a sophomore, and we did have older girls on the team. But, I'm a firm believer at the end of the day, like, the best player has to be a leader, because everyone's going to listen to you if they see you put in the extra work and things like that. So finding my voice was really, really key, and I think that's kind of when I really found my voice that year. I've always kind of, like, earlier growing up, like, I was kind of a shy kid, a quieter kid. Now I'm super out there, and I talk a little too much. But, finding my voice that year and finding, like, how to connect with these girls, I realized that at that level, I had to be overly positive, and I had to find a way to make everything fun. Even if that is going through a hard drill, like, how can you make it fun? How can you touch someone differently when, they're obviously not enjoying, the process or whatever they're going through. And so I'm a big joker. I love, telling jokes and making people laugh. And so I had to kind of incorporate that into it a little bit. Obviously, like, continuously talking to people and giving them shout outs and things like that. That makes people feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that I had to key into, but I still don't think I was, that great of a leader my sophomore year. That's when I was finding out, like, how to kind of put this all together and find my voice. I don't think I really became a great leader until I got to college. Mm-hmm. But that was a really interesting experience of trying to figure out how to work with different people and how to...
And being the underclassman, being a talented underclassman, right?
Yeah.
Kind of find your way and speak up when you feel like you see something.
Yeah.
But you have to, there's a certain, protocol for putting in the miles and all that kind of stuff. And you have the natural makings of a coach. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there, my dear. So, and we will revisit that. In the time, right?
Yeah.
Share with me a little bit about you then suffered an injury.
Yes.
And did you tell us about what the injury was and how that sidelined you?
Yeah, so just not too long after I got my black belt, actually, I had just went through a great sophomore session for club, and I was starting to get interest from some schools, and which was, obviously something that no one in my family's ever been through. So we obviously didn't know a lot about the process, and it was just like this awesome feeling. Like, all these schools are reaching out to me. Wow.
Who was reaching out to you? Share.
I had Yale was super into me, and
What was your GPA?
I was 4.0 in high school. Yeah.
Okay. And you're at Palo Alto High.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I had Yale, I had UC Santa Barbara, I had some other other mid majors, like NAU, things like that. Davis. I would say the biggest two were probably Yale and Santa Barbara. I also had NYU, which was D3.
Yeah, but still.
But still a great school.
Yeah.
And so I decided one weekend, I had a free weekend, and I decided, okay, I'm going to go play with my high school team, which I never did. I always played with my club team just because, you know, first of all, during that club season, you're busy. You pretty much have a game every single weekend or some sort of amount of games. But that session had ended, and it was kind of like right as my junior year was about to start, like August, September time. And my coach was just going to do a random tournament up in San Francisco. And I was like, hey, like, I have a free weekend. I want to play. And so I decided to do it. And I think it was either the second game, probably second or third game of the tournament. You know, my teammate kind of gave me a pass that was kind of out of the way. I went to go step out and go get it. And this girl kind of ran into my leg. And so I, you know, fell down right away, and I kind of heard a rip in my knee, and I didn't think of it anyway. Like, I had never seriously gotten injured. You have sprained ankles here and there. I've broken my nose, I've broken my finger, but that's very minor. Like, that's not a big thing.
But you heard the pop.
Yep, I heard the pop, and I was on the ground for a little bit, but I also, like, going back to playing with the boys and the way that my dad kind of raised me is, you know, especially playing with the boys, he was like, never show weakness. As a girl, you can't when you're playing with the boys. And so that's someone who, like, that's something that kind of stuck with me up until now. And so when I went down, you know, I didn't cry or anything. I just was kind of shocked, because when you hear that rip and that pop, it's shocking. But after, like, my coach came over and they were kind of feeling around my leg for a little bit, I ended up getting up and walking off, because I didn't want to show that weakness, but also I didn't want to show it to my teammates. I wanted them to make sure I was okay. And so I walked off, and obviously my coach sat me for the rest of the game, because I started like tingling and shaking a little bit.
It's a bit of shock.
Yeah.
So was it an MCL, medial collateral? Or?
It was ACL meniscus.
Meniscus. Huh?
Yeah. Been there? There we go. Yeah, so I ended up, my uncle is an orthopedic surgeon. He's very well connected, and we ended up going with the 49ers doctor, Tim McAdams, and he was awesome. And, you know, we decided to go the route of doing prehab before the surgery, because that helps with the rehab later. So we took a month before the surgery to strengthen my leg and everything, and then had the surgery, and it took about 9 months. Yeah, that's
Was it a reconstruction or just a?
Yeah. Okay. So they took it from my patellar tendon.
Patella. I had the first patella tendon reconstruction here for Cal Poly.
Wow.
In 1983.
That's insane.
Prior to that, they had done hamstring.
Yeah, or cadavers.
Cadaver.
Yeah.
So he took, and I watched. It was my fourth surgery. I'd had the meniscus repaired 3 different times and wore a brace, a Lennox Hill brace, because I was in the middle of my college career.
Yeah.
So NCAA gave me a hardship year, and I ended up doing full reconstruction and came back and broke school record again, made All-American again.
Amazing.
So I was like their poster child.
Amazing.
But I got to see, he showed me the film, you know, they take out the middle third.
Yep.
And then they attach
Yeah.
it, right? And he said, I watched the video when they said, we're going to try this on you. They were the sports orthopedics and all that.
Yeah.
When it was just, you know, this is 40 years ago when this kind of stuff was on the rise. But I was their poster child. It definitely it worked for me. Now, 3 or 4 years later, I'm coaching at Poly, and one of my athletes had the similar situation, similar surgery. She went to a 49ers doc.
Yeah.
I had the same surgery and ended up with patella baja, which is a really terrific scarring situation. So it did not go so well for her. Anyway, knock wood, I felt really blessed that mine was straightforward. And here you are saying you had the same
Yeah,
same surgery.
yeah.
So it was textbook. You made your way back.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and going back to the coaching, the college coaches and stuff, right? Because I just started getting some interest, and I was like really hype and all that. And then after, a couple weeks later, I hurt my knee, and I had to call every single one of those coaches. Said, hey, this is what happened. I ended up tearing my ACL and meniscus, and I'm gonna be out 9 months. And they kind of give you the spiel of like, we'll keep in touch. You're such a great player. Like, we love you, kiddo. Things like that. Never heard from them again.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Any of them?
At any of the only school that stayed with me was NYU.
Okay.
D3. And I was gonna actually end up going there before I got this Cal Poly offer.
Okay, so I want to hear about that. Eventually, let's finish high school.
Yeah, let's finish
because
it.
a big part of what I'm so excited that you're going to share in this time together is that journey.
Yeah.
The decision making, because this is it's a vastly changed landscape since you were a recruit.
Yeah.
And so I want to hear about that. But give us a little bit more about. So did you pretty much lose your junior season?
Yeah. I did not play my junior year.
That's huge.
Which is a huge year for recruitment, and then COVID hit. So,
oh my goodness.
Yes, and
okay.
so I was, like a lot of kids, like they rush back because they want to try and get back for that spring summer AAU club season. But all that being in California, all that was shut down, and so you could try and travel or play with a club that travels and stuff, but my club coach was like, nah, like we're not doing this, we're not traveling. And so that kind of gave me a little bit more time to get ready and get back to normal, which ended up being a great thing in the long run, because there's a lot of girls that kind of rush and then, they end up hurting their knee again or things happen, whatever. So I took a full 9 to 10 months before I really returned to play. And then it was about, trying to find a showcase or something that, could help me get back to playing and things like that.
Would you admit that some of the challenges you faced going through that freshman ordeal with Taekwondo, your black belt, came to play when you had to be patient through the rehab?
Of course, yeah. And, going back to the Taekwondo, I forgot to mention this, but, they were big on teaching us how to meditate and how to breathe. And, that's something that I've continuously done up and all the way until college, because that's such a like, if you know how to breathe, then you can translate that into such stressful situations and be okay. And so, I remember when I went down, I just focused on breathing, because you want to you kind of lose your breath a little bit, right, in that moment, but then how can you just breathe and stay calm, because at the end of the day, everything's going to be okay, right? I'm fine. I still could walk. I still was fine. Obviously I'm going to go through a major injury, but I was okay. And going through this whole process, it made me love basketball even more, because sometimes, right, you learn that when something's taken away from you, you realize how much you love it.
I remember going through the injuries as well, and times in my life when you're laid up a little bit, being a physical person. It's like, oh, I hated to run distance, right? I did a few road races in my life, but no, I was short twitch athlete, right? Yeah. But I would be laid up, and I'd be like, when I'm healed, I'm going to run. Yeah. I'm like Forrest Gump. Yeah. I was running. All I dreamt about was running. And then he'd get well and, okay, well, that's over.
No, yeah. So I ended up watching a lot of basketball.
Okay.
So that was my way. And I was still, with my high school program, I'd be at all the practices. I'll be at all the games unless I had, physical therapy or something for the practices. I was pretty much at every single game. But watching basketball helped me study from a different lens. And that's something that, not a lot of young athletes do. They don't watch film. You don't do that until you really go to college. And so when I had the opportunity to really watch basketball, not just, of myself but of other athletes, one of my favorite athletes, women's basketball athletes of all time, is Sabrina Ionescu. And when I was going through that injury, she was at Oregon, playing her senior year of basketball, and I don't think I ever missed watching an Oregon game. I fell in love with that team. I fell in love with her as a player, and I just studied her.
So what did you learn when you studied? This is a really great conversation. I'd
Yeah.
love to have you back and just talk
Yeah, of
about
course, yeah.
about being a student of the game. We
Yeah.
talk about this a lot.
Yeah.
I, having been a coach so long and having been blessed with 4 children who are all students of every game they played.
Yeah.
And you take it for granted.
Yeah, of
but
course.
that's because that's how they were. But then you start to look around and go, not enough young people, because there isn't time to coach them all of that in
No.
youth sports,
Yes.
right? The same as we were discussing about threshold and mental aspect and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. They're just, so being a student of the game is, I mean, that's just an incredible part of who you are. That's a huge part of your story.
Yes.
So when you talked about studying Sabrina Ionescu, what is it about studying the game that made you a better player?
I think just going back, like seeing it from a different lens, like you start seeing different reads and
But are you saying to yourself, okay, so next time I'm in, I'm going to try that, or I'm going to bring
Yeah.
that to my squad?
yeah.
Or what,
So what Sabrina Ionescu was really good at, it was ball screens, and for anyone that like knows me as a player right now, like I love ball screens.
what's a
love
ball
it.
screen? Educate me.
A ball screen is when, someone's dribbling and one of your teammates comes and sets a screen on your defender, and it's kind of like you just have to come off of it and make a read, right? So then they block your defender, but now you're going against the big's defender, or there's different ways to guard it and things like that. But one thing that I figured out on her ball screen was every time she came off the ball screen, she had a slight hesitation. And that was one to help her make, that was to help her make a read. And that was for a couple things. One of it was to give her big time to roll and come off so that they're in a scoring position. The other one was to look for her her options for her to score, right? Because now you have to read the big. And then another part of it for her was for her to just take a breath. And that's what I realized is that, you see a lot of people play basketball these days and they're so damn fast. But you're never going to be good if you're just fast. Because you need to have pace. You need to know when you can take a breath at a certain time. Or, a lot of things too is breathing when you're taking a shot. That's what Steph Curry does. That's what some of the greatest shooters do. But in a moment that's very tense and stressful, how can you relax? And so that was the biggest thing that I learned from her coming off ball screens, is that she uses that hesitation to take a second
A reset.
to relax.
Whoa, that's so cool.
Yeah, and so that's something that I really wanted to incorporate in my game, because pace is something that separates good players from great, in my opinion. And you see that through a Luka Doncic, or through Steph Curry, through some of the greatest players in the league right now. They never get sped up, because they stay calm in those moments, and they know how to make different reads in those stressful moments.
And you feel like this was gifted to you as a 16-year-old,
Yeah.
because you got injured.
Yeah, and that was something that it took me a while to figure out. At first you just kind of start watching them, and I was just watching her, but then I really started looking up YouTube videos and going back, and because if anyone knows Sabrina Ionescu at Oregon, they know about her pick and roll with Satu Sabali and Ruthie Hebard. And so that was something that a lot of people were talking about, but I was like, hey, can I really break this down? Because I also love coming off pick and rolls and making those decisions. And so that was something that I really studied while I was injured, and I wanted to incorporate when I came back.
So now share with me how you're obviously a natural leader. You laid the groundwork as a sophomore.
Yeah.
You're powering through this injury with respect and discipline and all the great traits that any coach looks for.
Yeah.
So now you come back and you've got this whole, you really are quite brilliant, Anika. I'm privileged to be getting to know you.
I appreciate it.
It's a great interview.
Yeah.
So you come back now, you're, an up and coming senior,
Yeah.
rising leader. How do you bring this intellectual aspect of the game to your coach and your teammates?
Yeah. And so, first of all, I want to say, coming back from that injury, there's a little bit of hesitation in yourself. And so first I kind of had to work through that myself of
Sure.
because there's a little bit of that fear of, am I going to get injured again? Or, that first time that someone gives you some contact or things like that. And I had to focus on that before I can kind of incorporate all this stuff, because I was scared a little bit, as any athlete is. But it wasn't until like I took my first charge, or I dove on the ground for a loose ball, that I was like, okay, I'm good. Like, I can do this. And I did wear the big brace on my knee to give me a little bit extra protection. And I wore that for a while just to be safe. But this, all the stuff that I learned in watching film and stuff, it's something that I talk to my coach a lot. And he put me in a lot of ball screens and so that I can incorporate it. But, at my high school, what I realized too with some of the girls that I played is if you tell them a little too much, they're going to be like, what is this girl talking about? Mm-hmm. And so there was some people that I could talk to it about, maybe like the big that I was doing the pick and roll with, and maybe another guard that can incorporate it. But I couldn't talk to about it about everyone, just because they had other things to focus on. Yeah. But going into like coming to college, whenever I had a moment like that, I would tell everyone, because you're getting a lot of girls that have that IQ and have the ability that when that to be in that position of whether it's a ball screen or anything in the game of basketball. If I was able to see something, then I would for sure communicate it to other my coaches or teammates.
For sure. But that's again a whole other conversation about. But let's do a window.
Okay.
You've had I want to hear a little bit about your senior season,
yes.
Right? You already alluded to it, but I want you to tell us how the recruiting process worked for you.
Yep.
I'd like to spend some time on that, because those who are going to be listening to this podcast really want to hear about that. I'm working with a basketball player right now, and I can't wait to tell her about this. And maybe in the part of the process, I can get you guys introduced.
Yeah.
Part of what I try to do is make those kinds of connections.
Totally,
It's huge. It's huge for young
sure.
adults. So you're now a senior. You kind of alluded to the fact that Palo Alto is a big high school, and that these things that you've gleaned in your downtime, you wisely upped your game in other facets. And so now you're having a successful senior season, and now you're getting some new looks.
Yep.
Yale has stepped aside. UCSB has stepped aside.
Yep. I wasn't talking to any school that was previously talking to me except for NYU.
Right. So this is what I want to hear from you is you had that early on. You had the big eyes for the D1.
Yes.
Okay. And I think you probably know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
That is a huge piece of what we're all confronted with right now.
Yeah.
Our athletes who dream about playing in college, I call it the shiny pamphlet. Mm-hmm. They're looking at the Saturday schools, the SEC bigs, the top tier, right? When I tell them there are 1,500 places to play, and that we break part of the presentation I do at the local schools and clubs is this slideshow that breaks it all down, how many opportunities you have and what those different divisions look like. Sort of broadens the perspective. But you just went through it. So you're a 15-year-old superstar sophomore, and you're getting the big hits. Then you have the breakdown and the rebuild, and now you've got it in your head that you're D1 material. Yeah. But you have a pretty cool D3 option already on the table. Yeah. So what did this? So you're now entering your senior, the recruit whole thing is happening. Tell us what it looked like for you. What came? Where did you go seek? And again, you were coming out of COVID.
Yes, yeah. So I was coming out of COVID, and there wasn't a lot of opportunity to go play just because everything was shut down. And so what I had to learn and what kind of keys into what my major is, and maybe something that I want to pursue when I'm done with basketball, but I had to learn how to market myself. I had to learn what are different ways that I can put myself out there so maybe someone will see it. And so it was funny, we were talking about phones and social media before. That's something that I really had to lock into and key into. What are different ways I can market myself? And I was never someone before that who was super into social media. It was my parents. I didn't have my own phone until 7th grade, which is still kind of early. But for the kids I was growing up around, that was kind of late. My brother and I shared a phone for a while and things like that, but it was when you have an older brother like that, it was basically his phone.
I would just like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. and Dr. and Mrs. Shaw, Dr. and Dr. Shaw, the Shaw family, for having the same philosophy that the Devaney family had.
But yeah, the only reason why we got a phone was because we were doing all these extracurriculars and we needed to communicate with them. Okay, we need to be picked up or whatever.
It's a tool, not a toy.
Yes,
That's
yes.
what we would say.
And so social media, like my brother and I were not, everyone had Snapchat, everyone had Instagram. Like we didn't really have that. I didn't make my Instagram until I think like after my freshman year or something like that.
Wow. Okay.
And so, but then, especially during COVID, everyone's on their phone and all that stuff. Like, it kind of took off from there, and, I knew that I was probably gonna, I kind of liked marketing. I liked the creative side of it. I'm kind of like an artistic person. I like using cameras and things like that, and so that was something that I was maybe thinking about of like doing something marketing related. But then now I like transition it into personal branding. How can I market myself? And that's also something that I had to learn about in college once I kind of made a name for myself here at Cal Poly. And just I had to find ways to maybe be seen.
Did you have an idea what the kind of experience that you wanted to have?
You're saying like in
high school. So when you're saying to yourself, okay,
Yeah.
what's next?
Yeah.
Right. So the first steps I take with
Yeah.
the young people that I work with are start to have it's got to be conversational.
Yeah.
You have to draw out of these young people
Yeah.
what they think they want to have happen.
Yes.
And then based on what they think they want to have, that's how I start to direct them.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Different places to look.
Uh-huh.
In the looking, their knowledge is power.
Yes.
Their ideas expand about what's possible, but also about what is likely.
Yeah.
What's likely.
Yeah.
Right. And so for you, this is five or 6 years ago, you're starting to go, okay, I had all this, I had this action, D1 action 2 years ago. That's not there right now, but I'm still that athlete. I'm a better athlete. This is where I think I want to go.
Yeah.
So what was that process like for you?
Yeah. I mean, I like to say I'm a very realistic person. Like, I set my goals high because I want to push myself, but I'm pretty realistic. And so going through that process, I knew that I was a better player coming out of that injury because of the mental side of everything I went through.
Right.
And I knew that I could play basketball at the Division I level. I just needed an opportunity. But I wasn't necessarily opposed to playing at other levels, but there is a different that title of playing Division I, and that's probably what you talk to a lot of your athletes about. Like, there's something surrounded like about that everyone kind of just loves that title,
Mm-hmm.
right? And sometimes people focus a little bit too much on the title rather than the experience and what they may get out of going to a school. Because say you go to, a D1 that is in the middle of nowhere and doesn't have great academics, but then you get an opportunity to go to like an NYU that's D3, that's an amazing school that once you have NYU on your resume, you're going to get numerous amount of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And you get to be in, New York if you love the city life and experience so many different things. Like, a lot of people don't think of it that deeply, and that's something that, again, thanks to my parents, like, we had a lot of talks about that because, again, for my parents, like, I'm the first Division I athlete in my whole entire family. I'm the first college athlete in my whole entire family. So I didn't, there was no expectation for me to, be at the highest level. And that's a conversation that I have and going through the schools that I had, what are the pros and cons of each,
Mm-hmm.
and everything is really important to do. But there is some sort of stereotype of all the names and where you play.
Sure. And I see that all the time. I
Yes.
feel like I'm combating that big time, particularly now as this landscape is so unstable,
Yeah.
right? We don't know what's going to happen at the Division I level.
No.
And whether the mid-majors are going to be stepping up because the top tier are going to become semi-pro.
Yeah.
There's no, and again, I follow this extremely closely, right?
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
a super big resource for all of this rapid
Yeah.
change. But some of the things, the trends that I see, Anika, that are sad, disturbing to me, although I proudly boast being the mother of 41s, I do it,
Yeah.
Right? And I was a Division II All-American. I dropped the Division II. I just say I'm an All-American. When time gives you
Yeah.
the freedom to just drop all the
Yeah.
stuff. So I'm trying to get people to drop it now. I'll see in social media posts when parents will confess, well, my child my student athlete got a full ride. It's only to a D3. Right? And you
Yeah.
want to go, I'm sorry, your student athlete is in the 7% that is going to play at the next level,
Yeah.
and that they're being compensated for it.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal thing. I think we place a lot of emphasis on that demarcation, D1.
Yeah.
I do think that is shifting as the portal is throwing a lot of athletes back into
Yeah.
the mix. And my hope, of course, is that the narrative does shift
Yeah.
to be one more of, if you're getting an opportunity to continue to pursue your sport,
Yep.
whether it is a launch pad to something professional,
Yeah.
or whether it is to offset the cost of college, it is an absolute privilege.
Yeah.
And you should be proud, right?
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you've got it in your head. Your folks are talking you off that ledge, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So they, going in, that was kind of, NYU was probably the school that I was going to go to, just because a lot of times because of COVID, a lot of kids were making their decision kind of early because you just don't know if you were going to get an opportunity to have another showcase or be seen by other coaches and stuff. And then later on, right, that whole year gets their year back. Right, so
that's right.
all the college kids got that year back. So then a lot of schools were like not really recruiting because they're getting everyone back.
Couldn't you petition for an extra year? You probably
I couldn't because we were on the cutoff. So because my senior year was when everything was kind of getting back to normal. Like my freshman year here, we had to do testing in the beginning, like every week and things like that. But we only had 2 games canceled because of COVID. So it wasn't enough to get
earn
that
your
extra year. Yeah.
You're telling us about the recruit experience. So you're
Yeah.
a senior and you're a good student. Were you like how big was Palo Alto High School? How big is it?
It's one of the best public schools in.
It's big. I'm saying.
Yeah. Our rival Gun is ranked for public schools.
Okay.
And we're just not too past it. But I don't know if you know about the whole Palo Alto Unified School District. When I was in middle school, was nationally known because of the suicides.
Yeah.
That-
of course. Yes.
And so
God, how quickly we forgot.
yes, and so that was my 8th grade year. That was the big year that they had, I think, 5 or 6 suicides.
They were making the pacts.
Yes,
right?
yeah. And so, but yeah, so Gun is like the really academic one, and then Palo Alto High School, Pally is what we call it, has better sports.
Yeah.
So if you want to play sports, you go to Pally. But also it's based on where you live. So we were on the side that was Palo Alto anyways. But yeah, no, it's a big school, and academically, like obviously I had to apply to NYU. It's not like you just get right in because you want to play basketball. Like you had to get into the school first. But going through that whole process, and as I was saying before, I was marketing myself on social media and emailing all these coaches, and it was just a really rough time with COVID, that not a lot of coaches people were committing super early, or not a lot of coaches knew what was going on. Like, do I offer this kid or not? And because there's not all these showcases or these tournaments and things like that. And so I just continuously, like, I have a hoop in my backyard, and I have a shooting machine that my parents got me that shoots it back out to me. And so I would just set up a tripod and record some of my workouts, and I would do that with my trainer as well too, and we were able to get into a gym with COVID and all that. And I would post it on social media. He would help me, my trainer would help me a lot, post a lot of things, and it's just, you just hope someone sees it. Yeah. Right? And so randomly out of nowhere, Cal Poly Coach T messaged me, and she knew my club coach at the time. And so, but like not super closely. And
but they had a connection.
Right? Not super closely, but they had a connection. And so I ended up playing in this one, my first showcase back that was ran by my club coach. And, I ended up doing pretty well. I still was trying to figure out, coming back from this injury, getting over that fear and everything. But I played fairly well, and I think Cal Poly was on the live stream that when they were recording it, and they saw something in me, I guess, or they saw, what I can be. And Coach T was the one who called me up, and I had a couple phone calls with her, and they were like, hey, we want to get into a Zoom with your family, because at the time there was no official visits or anything because of COVID. And so going into this Zoom, like, we expected nothing. And also, I'd never gotten an offer, right? Because all those schools before, they were just interests, and they were about to offer me, but then they left after I hurt my knee. And so we ended up having this Zoom. It was like a random afternoon, and all the coaches were on the Zoom, and they're kind of just talking about...
All of the coaches?
All the coaches were on the Zoom, and they were kind of just talking about Cal Poly and the school, how great it is academically, a little bit about the program and all that stuff. And near the tail end, they asked us if we had any questions. And so talking with my club coach, he's putting a lot of girls through playing a lot of college sports. So he kind of knew, like, okay, here are some of the questions you have to be prepared with. And
right.
My mom asked a couple of really great questions, and then kind of near the end of it, I forgot what question. I think my mom asked, like, how is the community, like, supporting women's basketball, because obviously women's sports don't get the big crowds and everything, and that was something that I love playing in front of people. I love playing in front of a crowd, and it comes to be that Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo has one of the most amazing communities that support all athletics. But she asked that question, like, does the community support, like, do you guys fill the stands kind of thing? And I remember the head coach was talking about how great the community is, and she was like, well, we can't wait for you to play in front of this amazing community, because we want to offer you a full ride scholarship to play Division I basketball at Cal Poly. And I remember in that moment, like, talking about all this breathing, I did not breathe in that moment. I was like, and same with my parents, we were shocked because we'd never heard those words of you're getting offered a full ride to play at Cal Poly. And so, I didn't commit right on the spot because I wanted to talk with other sources to make sure I'm going to the right program and things like that, and talk with my other coaches and stuff. But I will never forget that moment. I think my dad cried, which is kind of crazy, like, because it turns out now that I'm older, it's like I feel like men are always the most emotional. Like, women are, like, really strong, and so my mom was just, like, fired up, and my dad started crying, and, like, I just remember my brother wasn't obviously not on the Zoom, and we told him, and he started, like, running around the house, and then we got pizza to celebrate and all that stuff. It was just an amazing moment. But I ended up, like, taking a couple weeks to really think about it, and then talking with my coaches, like, we weren't sure if another offer was gonna happen. And so I ended up committing a couple weeks later. And after talking with obviously it's a great academic school, so we didn't have to worry about that, but just making sure you're making the right decision with the program and things like that. But we did all that work, and it was the right decision to make. But one of the toughest phone calls I had to make was talking to NYU, because that was the school that I was going to go to.
Yep.
And throughout my whole injury, I was on Zooms with them, I was on all these things, just always connected with them. They asked me how I was doing. They're an amazing coaching staff, an amazing program. Actually, they just won the D3 national championship the past 2 years in a row.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And so, their head coach, Meg Barber, helps coach with Team USA. Like, that program is amazing.
Okay, so let me ask you a question.
Yes.
Regrets?
No. A little bit.
Yeah. Well, you can't help but wonder,
you can't
right?
help but wonder, like, and I'm also, before I was going through this whole process, I was like, oh, I want to go to college in a city, because I thought I was a city girl, and I still, like, I would love to live in a big city, I love New York. I have a lot of family there. My mom went to Columbia, so my parents live there for a little bit, and they love New York too. But they ended up coming to California because my dad, you know, is in does computers, so that's why you go to California.
Right. Yeah.
And my mom was at UCSF when she was getting her PhD and stuff.
Okay.
So, but I, obviously you think about it because there's such a winning program over there. Yeah. And to be a part of that and to win a national championship, that's kind of amazing. Yeah. But, just finishing my season here at Cal Poly and all my 4 years, you really, look back at the whole journey when a chapter closes, right? And looking back at my time at Cal Poly through the ups and downs, through all the adversity that I went through, I don't regret it one bit because I was able to prove to not only myself, but to other Indian athletes, to other girls that look like me. That's really rare because I'm 5'3". I'm not tall. I'm 5'3" and I'm Indian, but I proved to other people that look like me that you can play basketball at the highest level, and there's no greater reward aside from winning and all that stuff. To be able to represent something greater than yourself and to inspire others, that was the greatest reward out of all of this. That I had, Indian athletes or young girls come up to me and be like, "You're my idol, you're my inspiration." That's that touches you differently, right? And that's wow.
Did you expect that when you became a collegiate basketball player?
I didn't. You come into college and you're just you're kind of a little bit just worried about yourself. You're very just locked into what can I do to be a good player and things like that. But as I've gotten older and gone through my journey here at Cal Poly, and you don't have to worry about all that stuff because I kind of already established who I am. You get to kind of think about and worry about things outside of the court, which also ties into leadership and being a captain and things like that. But connecting with the community was probably one of the most amazing things I've got to do here at Cal Poly. And I actually did an Anika Shaw basketball camp not too long ago during the beginning of the year before it kind of gets all crazy. And I had about 25 kids come out to my camp.
Wow.
And it was just a really small 2-hour, $10 to join at camp.
Where did you host it?
It was at Laguna Middle School, but it was outdoor.
Okay.
It wasn't even
just
indoor.
At the hoops
yeah.
outside. Is that something you want to continue doing?
Yeah, I've thought about doing one maybe later this spring or in the summer, just to kind of leave my last mark here in San Luis Obispo. But yeah. Anyways, going back to that, we totally went on a tangent. But going back to that. No, we
didn't. We're telling stories, girlfriend. That's all that matters.
Call with NYU.
Yes, the breakup call.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a huge growth.
Yeah.
Growth thing.
Amazing program there. And in fact, I've played with a lot of girls that, either they were here at the Division I level and they're maybe thinking of going a little lower, or
we say going another direction.
Sorry, going to another direction.
It's all good.
There you go.
It's all good.
Let me rewind that. Let me take that back. Going to another direction. Yeah, another direction. Yeah. I always am the greatest advocator for NYU, and obviously now it's a great program, so it's probably even hard to get into it itself. But I had, it's cool to see when one opportunity doesn't work for someone else, it could work for another person, and so that kind of happened for me with Yale. So when I got hurt, my club teammate got the offer from Yale.
Oh, that's amazing.
And she ended up going pre-med, and I'm like, dude, you take that. She's
the way it was
smart,
supposed to be, right?
And she's going pre-med, and she's a great student, and she had a amazing time at Yale. But going back when I had to tell NYU that I'm taking the Cal Poly offer, it was a great call with their coaches, and I was just I appreciate they gave me hope, right? At a time where I necessarily was, didn't really believe in myself. And so I made sure to thank them for that whole experience and for believing in me, because ultimately they were the first school to ever believe in me. But it was honestly, it's kind of like a breakup call, right?
It is.
And I was struggling to find words, but you kind of grow from it a little bit, and I was like, they were amazing. They were like, I kind of just told them that, look, my dream is to always, play at the highest level, and I wanted to prove to myself and other people that I can play at this level, and so this is the direction that I'm going to go because I've gotten this opportunity, but I want to thank you for everything that you guys have done for me, for giving me that belief, and for believing in me, and just being, amazing group of women that are leaders, and that, I learned a lot from them just talking to them for a year.
Yeah.
And they were awesome. They were like, we're so proud of you for, getting that offer, and for a school to believe in you at that level. And we can't wait to see what you do.
Yeah.
And we know you're going to be a great player. And they kind of were just like, at the end, they were like, if you ever need anything, and if you ever decide that you want to change where you're at, like, we'll always be here for you, and we'll always be, just a school that's going to believe in you.
And it sounds to me like what you just said, that's why they're championship material.
No,
that's how championships are made.
They're amazing. And so
and those are incredible connections that you
Yeah.
handled very wisely, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't know where. I talk to young people about this all the time. You just never ever know. One of the things I convey all the time, and it's part of a program that we're promoting, it's called Roadmap to Recruitment, and I've taken my in-person counseling service and turned it into an online masterclass.
Yes.
Right? So that it's like a starting point. If you think you want to do this at the next level, just get the course, take a look. It's 70 minutes of content that shows you how to do the research, what you should be thinking about, terminology, a template for researching schools, a template for reaching out to coaches, like all that you would need if you're a freshman or a sophomore. Right? To look at what the recruiting process looks like. But part of what I say in that is that what young people and their families need to understand is that coaches talk. Coaches talk. And like what I shared with you about the my baseball player, just seeing a connection, right? In looking at a couple of schools. And every student athlete I've ever worked with, when we do the research, there's somebody at a school we're looking at who I know or they know, or there is some connection. So when you're in this process as a recruit, you just got it demonstrated to you. The quality of the connection you make with those coaches, it stays with you. You may choose a career as a coach or marketing for women's sports, and you will run across these coaches and these people that you have connected with as a young woman. So every interaction has the potential to serve you.
And even, being at Cal Poly this last 4 years, as players, you help out with recruitment for other players that come in. And it's always interesting to me to hear, sometimes there's these girls that come in and they may have 4 offers or whatever, and they're going on all these visits, and when they decline Cal Poly to go to another school, they end up just sending a text to the coaches.
Ooh, a text breakup.
And so that always shocks me, because I'm like, if I was in their position, right, and I didn't get to be in this position, but if I had multiple schools that I had to choose from, one, when you go to a school, like, those coaches, those players, they put a lot of effort into you to make you feel welcome, and to make you feel like this is a place that you can call home. So you should always thank them over the phone, not over text.
This is the part where I'm asking my listeners to lean in and pay attention to Anika Shaw.
But, like, it's just super unprofessional to me if you just send a text, and it's kind of disrespectful to the program that just poured a lot into you. So that's why, like, sometimes when I hear those stories, I'm like, just call them up. And that's that way, like, even though I've rejected NYU, I know that I left them on good terms and in respectable terms, that I could call them up again right now. And so that's kind of like, and, talking about connections, what you're saying, like, we're coming to a world where, like, connections are probably one of the most important things. And
Mm-hmm.
it's about what, the way that you leave certain things, to leave them on good terms. So no matter what, like you were saying, somehow people are just connected. You can't control that, but for some reason, this random person over here can be connected to this random person here.
You are a couple of paragraphs or a couple of minutes of conversation away from being connected, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so on this note, I would like you to share with our listeners you were already ahead of the game as a high schooler.
Yeah.
You're bright, and you were raised by obviously a very nurturing environment. So you already had a mature mindset in high school. Will you please share with us some of the biggest takeaways you got from that period of time when you came out of injury and into your senior year, and now you're facing the big decision making?
Yeah.
What about the decisions that you made and taking that Zoom, taking a few weeks to accept the offer from Poly, come into play here? Fast forward in the 4 years as a leader on a Division 1 program at a school where you felt embraced and all that. What is your big takeaway? Because let me point something out to you. One of the things that I've maintained philosophically, and when I write my book, this will be included. What I find fascinating about this process, and I'm sure you're going to appreciate this.
Yeah.
You just say, God, Kathy's so brilliant. Your brain is making a decision at 17 years old.
Yes.
Right? To do something that you've never in your life contemplated having to do before.
Yeah.
You're 17 or 18 years old when you leave for college.
Yes.
If you're choosing to do this, to be an athlete. It is a time when it's the single biggest decision you will make in your entire life. And the reason I point this out is because, number one, your brain's not fully formed until you're 25.
Yeah.
You are making the decision completely alone. Yes, your family may help you and your coaches may guide you, but you're the one who packs the suitcase and goes to live in the dorm room in a whole new place you've never been before, right? Every other decision you make, you're going to make when your brain is more fully developed.
Yeah.
Am I going to go to grad school? Am I going to take an internship?
Yeah.
Am I going to travel? Am I going to date someone? Am I going to get engaged? Am I going to get married, buy a house, have a baby? Okay, all those things happen when your brain is more fully formed, or when you're with someone else to make the decision with.
Yeah.
But here you are, 17, 18, making this decision about something you're going to do completely alone.
Yeah.
I don't think we think enough about
We don't.
how seriously heavy that is.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's mom and dad over here that are just trying to make sure that their student athlete has every opportunity possible, right?
Yeah.
So I find it profound that young athletes ask themselves to manage all of this and then go off and do it without being appropriately supported or strategically set or whatever. That's why I'm so passionate about what I'm doing and about what I'm providing by inviting people like you to come and talk. I can't wait for people to hear your stories, especially the young athletes that I have. I know that follow me that are going to get so much from hearing your journey. So from that time where you took that Zoom call and went, yes, and then kind of decided, I'm going to do this thing. You packed your bags, you came. You were a freshman, and so now you are finished. What do you want your future to be? What did you learn through the collegiate athletic experience? Give us a couple things that surprised you, a couple things you knew were going to go your way or you were going to get to enjoy.
Well, I knew it was going to be hard because it's a big commitment and you live a different lifestyle than just a normal student, right, who isn't playing sports. But other than that, like, you're really not prepared for anything, and that's for anyone that, it's your first time living away from home and living by yourself, and you learn a lot about yourself in this whole journey. But probably one of the biggest things that I learned throughout this whole process is that I'm one strong woman and I'm a badass. And, like, I know that I can be in any sort of environment or and I can figure it out and be a leader, because when you go through adversity on a daily basis because your coaches put you in uncomfortable positions so that you can find a way to figure out how to get out of it or how to overcome it, then when you see adversity later on in your life or in a job or with a family, whatever it is, you're not afraid of it. And because, like, in college, I saw it on a repetitive daily basis. And it's not adversity, like it's a very different kind of adversity, right? It's not a thing where you have to make a big decision or things like that. It's just little moments here where you can easily be broken, but you decide, no, I want to overcome this and I want to see myself on a different side of this. And that's what college coaches are supposed to do, that they're supposed to push you to a level that you don't even believe you can reach. And so there were times throughout this whole process where I'm going home after practice and I'm crying and or I'm pissed, or there were times where I'm just amazing and I'm on a high. And there's so many different emotions throughout this whole process of playing college athletics. But the biggest thing, I think, out of all of this is how can you impact others within it? And so for me, leadership, as we were saying, was kind of the biggest thing that came out through this whole process. I know that, and I necessarily don't believe that I was a born leader. You have to work for it, and you have to fail a couple times to grow and figure out how you can be a better person and a better leader. But as I'm talking to you today, I have such a confident voice that I didn't have before coming into college athletics. And so again, that goes through the adversity and getting pushed and things like that. But my ability to make those relationships and those connections with not only my teammates, but my coaches, my trainers, everyone in Cal Poly Athletics, even people that I played on the opposing team, just being a good person and making those connections.
Sure, because
right?
you see the same players year in and year out, right?
And it's like,
them. It's a fraternity or sisterhood,
Yeah, and it's amazing to be able to not only impact people that are younger than you, because that's a little bit easier to do, but find a way to impact your coaches and people that are older than you, because just by the person that you are. And I just knew coming into college athletics, I'm going to work my butt off, and for some reason it's going to work out for me because I'm going to do that. And I'm just going to put my head down and I'm going to work hard every single day. And I'm going to learn a lot about myself, and I'm going to get pushed to an extreme level. But I know on the flip side of that, I'll be okay. And I'm going to be this strong, this badass woman, because I've been through all of that at a young age, and I've been through a lot of adversity and ups and downs within sports.
Yep, the things that teaches us, eh?
Yeah. So
tell us when you're looking back on your journey, what do you hope people remember, and then what's next for you on or off the court?
Yeah.
What do you hope your legacy is, Anika?
Yeah. My biggest thing for me is I hope that people remember me as a good teammate. I've been blessed to have this amazing career and get all these amazing rewards based on scoring points or assists or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I want like my teammates that I spent every single day with for years to look back and be able to say, damn, she was a good teammate and she cared about us and she poured a lot into everyone that was around her, and she was selfless, and she didn't care about herself too much that she wasn't able to be a team player.
One of the great coaches, I'm a quote person too.
Yeah.
One of the great, it might have been John Wooden, it might be Gino or Emma. It's one thing to be a great player, it's better to be a great teammate. I absolutely love that.
Yeah, I think that's Gino, actually.
Could be Gino.
Yeah.
He's one of my little heroes.
Yeah, I love him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of the biggest thing for me, just to be remembered as a good person, a good teammate. But
what's next?
What's next? Yeah. So I've decided that as of kind of last year, my junior year, again, I had a kind of more of a breakout year. My junior year, sophomore year, I would maybe say sophomore year was like, okay, this is who she is. But junior year was kind of more of like putting that pressure. Can she really do it? And same with this past year, there was a lot of pressure on me to really perform. But last year was after kind of going through my sophomore junior year is when I decided that I want to pursue this professionally. I want to continue to play basketball for as long as I can.
Nice.
So I'm in the works of getting an agent right now, and hopefully I'll be playing somewhere in Europe this next year. You don't really figure that out until like July, August, September time period of where you're going.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a waiting game process, which is hard for me because I'm a planner.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just excited for the opportunity, and at the end of the day, like, I want to continue to pursue this just for the experience, because I know that I'm going to learn a lot about myself just having to go live in another country all by myself, and you kind of just have to figure it out. So I'm excited to get challenged at the next level, because it's you think college basketball is hard, like, it's just going to get harder. And so I'm excited.
But you're ready.
Yeah.
You're ready.
I'm excited to be challenged, and I'm excited to continue, this story and this journey of me on basketball, because I feel like there's so much more that I can tell, and that I can continue to inspire others who look like me, that they can play basketball at the highest level. So that's why I want to keep going, because, I believe that I can reach another level of myself, but I also, want to keep this story going, so that other girls can look at me and be like, I can do what she did, just solely because she believed in herself.
Yeah. Well, there's a window we have as athletes. There's a window that's physical, right?
Yeah.
And you guys, there's so much available now in terms of resources to expand that window, right?
Yeah.
And we tell Rory all the time, you got a lot of time, especially if you want to throw. He's got multiple Olympic Games to look to because he's so young. He's only 20.
Yeah.
But you guys have a window, and one day you will hang up the boots. You'll hang them up.
Yes.
So you want to make sure that you have filled this time with as much potential, possibility, story making, memory making as you possibly can. Because every time you do that, Anika, you're also creating, you're mentoring, you're modeling for those who are coming behind you.
Yes,
Every little thing you do, every decision, every exchange, every podcast episode, every new friend you make, it all adds up to that which leaves a legacy for those who are following.
Totally.
We have some rapid fire questions to finish up with.
Okay, let's hit it. Come on.
What's your favorite pregame snack?
Oh God, I don't even. I honestly, an acai bowl.
An acai bowl. Okay, fair enough. What's your go-to pump-up song? What's your walk-up song?
This is very funny. I actually listen to Bollywood music.
Okay.
Before games, yeah.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah,
I'm loving that answer. Because I eat at Jewel of India from time to time.
Oh, so I'm sponsored by them too.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So if you want free food, just let me know.
Family. We love them.
Yes, I love them too. Yeah.
I can't wait to share that with my friend John, Mr. Franklin. Guy loves Jewel of India. What one word that teammates would use to describe you?
That's hard. I would say unstoppable.
Okay. Unstoppable. Very good. Most clutch shot you've ever hit?
So I've had 2 game winners in my college time, but I'm going to kind of reframe this question a little bit. One of my favorite moments that was clutch, you could say, was actually an assist that led to a game winner.
Ah, fun.
So that was kind of, it's interesting because everyone dreams of like shooting that last shot, getting the game winner, which I've been through, but there was kind of like a greater reward to assist. Basically, the quick story, but we were down to, I think it was UC Riverside by 1, and Coach Stiers drew up a play for me. And so I was basically going to get this flare screen, and the inbounder had to lob it to me, and I would catch it on the other side, get it really quick and shoot it, because there was like 2 seconds left. And so I was supposed to shoot that shot. I was supposed to have the game winner. And so as I get the ball, as I'm rising to shoot it, I see the big that was guarding the big that set the screen for me, my teammate that set the screen for me. She came to contest my shot, and so I squeezed it in and caught it in the air to shoot it and threw it into my teammate, and she got the game winner.
Shot.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was a layup.
Oh my God, that's so cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Dream band to work with in marketing. Dream brand to work with in marketing.
That's really hard too. I mean,
Who impresses you when you think about wanting to get into business marketing?
yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to not say Nike because they're just
And
one
you know
of the biggest.
You know the Nike swoosh was
Yeah.
a woman.
Yeah,
She designed
yeah,
that. You know
yeah.
that story, right?
But I'm kind of more of like, I like to connect with smaller brands, and because there's kind of, again, like when you, and this is kind of like when I came to basketball here at Cal Poly, like we weren't a great program. We didn't win a lot, and so when you get to see something build and maybe leave it or be a part of it when it becomes really great, like there's no better feeling. So I like Nike's always a dream for any athlete, but to be a part of something that's smaller and help build that is
You're building
probably,
the Cal Poly brand.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I get that. And you can help build the Athletic US brand.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll take that. One thing on your bucket list after graduation.
I want to see the 7 wonders of the world.
Excellent.
Yes.
That's a great answer. Okay, very cool. And where can our listeners follow your journey from here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty on social media a lot now. So on Instagram, you can always follow me on Anika Shaw _. But, I hope to just continue to be connected with Cal Poly as well in my journey, because they've obviously meant a lot to me and gave me that opportunity to play at this level. So I hope that I continue to stay connected with, so many different outlets that have helped me, and maybe they can share my story too.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. Anika Shaw isn't just leading on the stat sheet. She's showing us what it means to bring heart, resilience, and creativity into every part of life, from bouncing back after injury to hitting clutch shots or assisting. Building a future in business, she's proof that stories shape us as athletes beyond the game. Anika, thank you for sharing your journey and your inspiration, your memory making, all your stories. We are rooting for you on and off the court. Certainly going to follow your career as you go to Europe. That's so exciting. I am thrilled that you came and sat with us today.
Of course.
And I'm pleading and knowing that you'll come back.
Yeah, of course I'll be back. And thank you guys so much for having me.
Absolutely, right over there.
Yeah, shout out.
Athletica US, we brought it in.
Yeah.
Thank you, love.
Yeah, thank you.
You'll come back, yeah?
Yeah, I'll be back.
Very cool.